with another episode of Out and Up, where we encourage young athletes to achieve their very best outside of the game. And like every show, we're going to go ahead and let our special guest this week introduce himself.
How you doing, everybody? My name is Xavier McLean. I'm a basketball player here at Columbia University. So it's nice to see y'all. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you, Mr. McLean, for joining us, and we appreciate you finding some time in your busy schedule to actually be on here with us. So thank you. So we're going to get right into the questions. You ready to get into the questions?
Let's go.
All right. Where are you originally from? Where are you born and raised?
Right. So I'm a product of a military family. I was born in Izmir, Turkey. So I guess if you want to say like where I'm from, where I was born, that's where I was born. But then when I was 1 year old, me and my family moved to North Carolina, and I've been all over. But North Carolina is where I spent. Springfield, North Carolina, Fayetteville, North Carolina, that area is where I spent most of my life. So, yeah.
All right. So when did you start playing basketball?
I started playing basketball. I mean, obviously, every little kid, just shooting around on like small little hoops as a little baby and stuff like that. But I started playing the game like organized at the age of 10. Just playing like in the local like rec league and stuff like that. Just having fun.
All right. On what position do you actually play?
So I play point guard and shooting guard. Yeah, mostly more of the two, but I play both.
All right. Have you played any other sports?
Yeah. When I was younger, I played football. I ran track, and did like some field events in track as well. So like those were like the main two I did outside of basketball. But once I got to high school, I focused on basketball more and felt like that was something I kind of wanted to take a little bit further. So yeah, but I enjoyed football. I enjoyed track. Those were some good moments for me back in the day. Yeah.
Oh, all right. So what inspired you to start playing basketball?
I just always watched the game. Like with my dad, he's a huge basketball fan, big basketball mind. I consider him a little bit of a historian. So just hearing him talk about basketball, and it was just pretty much ingrained in me from young. And ever since I started playing, I just always loved it. Always had a passion for it. Always wanted to do my best. And that fire just never really left me. So I think just wanting to play, wanting to get in on the fun that everybody was talking about the game of basketball is what drove me to play, and it's still with me today.
That's awesome. So I'm gonna ask you. You've been a fan of the sport. Who are your teams?
See, when I was younger, growing up in North Carolina, I was a big UNC fan. But as I got older, I started to like everybody. So now I don't really have teams, and I like more players. And I'm just a fan of all types of basketball: college, overseas, professional. I watched high school. Like any type of basketball, I enjoy watching. I'm a huge fan of women's basketball. So yeah, but I mean, I don't really have no team. I just love the game.
All right. So who are some players that you kind of been watching? I mean, whether it's high school, on the high school level, college, or even or not necessarily college as much as in the pros. Who are some players that you follow or you watch?
Yeah. Of course, I'm a left-handed guy, so I watch James Harden, D'Angelo Russell. Of course, got to give LeBron his due. LaMelo Ball, De'Aaron Fox. Huge fan of those guys. I like watching guards. I like watching guards that put up numbers. Chris Paul. I like Chris Paul. And for some reason, like in high school, I was a huge fan of like Mark Jackson, because I just like how he like demanded the game. Like Mark Jackson, Gary Payton, like those guys, how they just controlled the game at the point guard position. Like I just like watching guys like that too. And of course, like the greatest of all time is Michael Jordan. So
that's awesome.
All of those guys, I just love watching basketball.
And it's clear to me that you have to be a student of the game when you start naming the greats like the Gary Paytons and the Mark Jacksons, players that I definitely watched, during their careers. Those are definitely people that were awesome at that point guard position. So that lets me know you're definitely a student of the game. Did you do a lot of watching film growing up?
I did, man. Once I started playing AAU, because when I started playing AAU, like my freshman year of high school, and then my sophomore year is when I started playing like on the circuit. And so the first year was more mom and pops, local teams. And then once I moved to the circuit, it was a different brand of basketball. And I wasn't the guy that I didn't have all the handles, stuff like that. That's not really my game. I can do that stuff, but it's not really my game. But I had to play point guard. And I remember thinking, like, having to play point guard, you got to be shifty, all that. And my coaches told me to go home and just watch like Mark Jackson, watch Gary Payton, watch those guys that is really simple. They get up the court, do their job, get into the offense, go play defense. Like, it's easy. And I'm a guy that likes to score the basketball as well. So, like, doing all the, the flashy Kyrie, Isaiah Thomas stuff, that wasn't really me. So just get up the court, give it up, get it back, do your thing. And so that's why I like watching those guys, because their jobs were really easy.
All right. So Mark Jackson and Gary Payton, we know they did a good job at controlling the game and handling the ball, as well as Gary Payton nickname was the glove. Do you have a little bit of that defense in you?
Oh yeah, man. I play defense. One thing about playing in college, man, you got to play defense. In high school, when you're the best player on your team, you can get away with certain possessions, take the tough possessions off. But once you get to college, man, like, every possession you got to play defense. That's one thing we hang our hats on, is just trying to be the best defensive team every night out, trying to do our jobs on defense, and I take pride in defense. So yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that you played some AAU ball. What was that experience like for the young athlete, elementary, middle school, just really getting, stepping it up on that level? Talk about the experience of playing AAU ball. What was that like?
Right. So I had two totally different experiences. When I started out playing AAU, I played with, like I said, a local team called LBA Thunder. Shout out to them, because they really helped me get my confidence to a certain point that it needed to be in order to play. And when I was playing with LBA, it was a lot of structure. It was a lot of, we ran out of balance plays. We ran offense. We had a press. Like, we was doing all that type of stuff. It was very similar, kind of like how high school is. Our coaches ran it pretty much like it was a high school team, and it was fun, and it taught me a lot. It was very educational. When I switched over to the Adidas circuit with Team Wall, it was okay. It was more of a showcase team. So it's like, you bring your game, you come hoop. And when you're in a situation like that, when you're playing with guys from all over the state, from other states, who are some of the best guys in the country you ever played with in your life, they only got time to be educational. At this point now, you just got to go show you can hoop and do what you got to do in order to be on a team, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. I say it's a good thing because you got to be a dog. So if you come in there timid, if you come in there on any type of nonchalant or reluctancy, then you don't have no chance. But at the same time, it can be tough for some guys, because a lot of guys don't really flourish in a system like that. A lot of guys need a play-in system. A lot of guys can't really, I'm not going to say they can't play one-on-one basketball, but there's other guys that are just better at playing in structured offenses. And for me, it was one of those things where I had to learn, okay, like, it took me a little bit of time to really get that confidence, like that real grit confidence, to go out there and just hoop. Because when you're playing against everybody from all over the country, you got Coach K, Coach Cal on the sideline, like, we don't got time for you to be sitting here shook, like, trying to, so right. you gotta be out there, and you gotta play every game 100% on both ends, and you gotta play with some confidence, and you gotta play with some swagger. So one thing I'll say about AAU is very, very different from high school, but I think it's very, very important that guys play AAU. That way you get to see other players from outside of where you would normally see them, and you get to see, like, okay, like, there's a lot of basketball players in this world. It really puts it in perspective. It really puts it in perspective about how much work you got to put in, how many players there are, and how your spot can be taken at any moment. So I think AAU is very beneficial when it comes to just getting to that next level as a basketball player.
That's good. So playing AAU ball and then moving on, even as you continued on it on the high school, like what's the transition from middle school to high school age ball? I like, our college athletes especially, to kind of just give the young athlete a picture of the different things they'll have to do to transition to each level. So what was the biggest difference from those age levels, from the middle school to kind of high school level?
Okay, so for me, like I said, I was a military kid, so I actually was my middle school years were done in West Virginia, because my dad was stationed there because he was a recruiter for a little bit. So I went middle school, West Virginia, conference county championship game. Right after, the next day, we moved to North Carolina.
Wow.
So going from West Virginia was an entirely different brand of basketball to North Carolina, which is one of the richest basketball states in the country. It was different. It was tough because you go into a situation where the teams, you got the sophomores, you got the juniors, you got the seniors that are returning. Mm-hmm. Then on top of that, you got the sophomores, the juniors, and the seniors that think they're gonna make the team. Then you got the other freshmen that you got to compete with. You got JV, you got varsity. Some schools have freshman team. And at the end of the day, is you got to have a certain level of confidence. You got to have a certain level of confidence. You got to come in there just as good. Now you have some schools that look at the 8th graders like while they're in middle school, while they're playing, and they kind of have that vision of how they'll be at the next level. If they're really good, they'll play varsity. If they're good enough to make the team, they'll play JV. But for me, it was just, I would say kind of like the high school to college is physicality, but it's also like you got to adapt to like a different style of coaching, and then you got to adapt like different structures and like offense and defense and stuff like that. So, but at the end of the day, it comes down to just having confidence and just believing in your game, because a lot of guys in high school, they're not really, you'll be surprised at how many guys are really doing like the necessary things to get better. Because a lot of people in high school don't want to play college basketball, and that's perfectly fine. But if you're someone that kind of sees above, you also get to see, like, again, like I said, in perspective, like how much work you got to put in over the next man. And I would just say like having confidence and putting in that work, like it's another gear you have to go to. In middle school, you can kind of just play your game. It's all fun and games. But once you get to high school, that's when it starts to become like a lot more meaningful, a lot more serious. So I would say that's the biggest transition, just having that mindset, that business mindset.
That's good. So on what level, like you said, there are some players that play in high school and may not even have the aspirations to even play on the college level, nonetheless the pro level. So at what period in playing basketball did you kind of say, hey, I believe I have what it takes to play at a higher level, whether it's college or even whether you have aspirations to even go beyond that? At what level did you start to feel like, hey, I have it? Because we know that a lot of people don't recognize, like, there's a very small percentage of young people that play on the middle school or even high school level. Like, as you go up, the percentages drop. Yeah. So what you've already accomplished to not only be, playing past high school, but you're playing at, a high level even in college. Yeah. So at what point did you know, hey, I think I have enough to go to a higher level? At what point did you feel that?
Honestly, ever since I started playing, like I always envisioned myself, even before I was even any good for real. I always worked hard, and I always just had like the highest expectations for myself. Like I remember my first year playing basketball back in 5th grade, and it was like, oh yeah, this year I'm gonna average 19. I'm gonna do all this, that. Okay. Didn't do it, but like that was the bar I set for myself.
That's good.
Every year I was always like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do this. And I was just having this conversation with my dad a couple of days ago. I used to always write my goals for the season. Like the first practice, after the first practice, I would go home and I would write all my goals that I wanted to achieve for that year on a piece of paper and put it on my wall. And I did that from 8th grade up into my senior year of high school. And I was talking to my dad about it, and I was just like, we were talking about it. He was like, if you really think about it, like everything you wrote down from those years, there's only about 2 of them that you didn't achieve. And it was win a state championship. And then if you want to be technical, like certain numbers, like if I say I once averaged 25, I may average 23, stuff like that. But he was like, it was really just win a state championship. That's the only thing that you really didn't achieve. And I say all that to say, like, I've always thought like, I can play this, I can play at the next level. Like when I was in middle school, I know I can play in high school. When I was on JV, I know I can play varsity right now. When I was on varsity, I know I can play Division I. I know I can do all this. But the thing for me was I'm not gonna say I didn't always have the confidence, but I wasn't as like I didn't always welcome the challenges the way I should have.
Okay.
And I wasn't always like as outspoken about it as I should have been. But that came with time, obviously, getting that confidence, getting those roles where you can do what you got to do. But I pretty much always thought like, there was never like a time where I was really just playing the game like just for fun, to be honest. And I know a lot of people may think that's a bad thing because basketball should be fun, which it is. But I've always played the game with a purpose and to get to the next level. So.
Right, and I think very equally the same. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the general mindset is you want to have a love and enjoy it, you know, from a fun standpoint. However, right. I think it's very important that you play the game with a purpose and a goal that you set to achieve whatever it is, whether it's the personal goals, whether it's championships. I think it's very important. So I think that's also good that you had that mindset.
Yeah, people used to always ask me like, what do you do for fun? I used to always be like, I play basketball. Like, that's what I do. Like, and they used to be like, do anything else? And like, of course, like you go out with your friends. Sometimes you do stuff like that. You just chill. But for the most part, like as long as I can look back, like what I did for fun was just play basketball. And then people were just like, how is it fun if you're always doing it? But like, it's like we just talked about before we got on, like it's the process. Like the process is seeing yourself get better every day, seeing you like achieve what you want to achieve and just knock down different obstacles and different barriers. Like that's fun. Like that's when you get that satisfaction, that's fun. So yeah, for me, it's always been that.
That's good. So I guess we'll touch on the process of choosing a school. You played AAU on the AAU circuit. You played in high school. At some point, the young athlete will have to start looking at making that decision. As far as playing on the next level, if they have what it takes to play on the college level, what are some things that you encourage the young athlete to look for when looking at a school?
Yeah, so for me, I was blessed enough to have options. I had a lot of schools that offered me and were very interested in me. So for me, it was a very tough decision. It was a lot of switching back and forth. Mom, I like this school. Oh, Dad, I like this school. Like it was tough. But I always ask those questions that I need to ask. And a lot of them are athletic questions, but you also have to ask the academic ones as well. I always used to ask, will I have opportunity to compete for a good role in the team? How long will the coach be here? Like, what's the team like? What direction are they going in? How do you envision me? And then you have like the academic questions, like how's the campus? Like, what's the graduation rate? And of course, at Ivy League schools, you don't really have to ask too many academic questions because it speaks for itself. But like just as like at schools, like what's the study hall like? What's it like when you go on the road? Do you have somebody that you can talk to catch up on work? Like stuff like that. Just making sure you're asking all the questions you have and you don't hold anything back because it, like whether you know it or not, like you're making probably the biggest decision of your life and the decision that's probably going to shape the way your life goes for the rest of it. So it was a tough process. I think I cut my schools down to Campbell University, Dartmouth, Brown, and Columbia. And after asking all those questions, like the last thing was I wanted to be able to wear my number, which is number 3. And that's the number I've worn since I was a kid, with the exception of maybe a couple years. I wanted to wear number 3. So I was able to do that here at Columbia. I was able to get the education that Columbia offers, which is a top 10 education in the world. Being in a place like New York City with so many different resources and stuff like that. And then have an opportunity to compete and have a role in a team that's conducive to winning and really huge and very impactful. So this was I always tell people, when you're making your decision, you want to make the best decision for you. Don't make a decision for your mom. Don't make a decision for your dad, your friends. So everybody comes to you play, which is important. But you want to make a decision at the end of the day. If it does go bad, you have no regrets because it's where you wanted to go. You never. My dad used to always say, he was like, I'm gonna let you handle all of this, because a year go by, 2 years go by, you're not about to be calling me on the phone talking about, hey,
Right.
we came here because y'all made me. So yeah, so man, like I said, take everything into account, do your research, ask the questions, man, and just make sure you go somewhere and you make a decision that it's a place where you want to go. Whether it's D1, D2, D3, doesn't matter. If it's where you want to go, that's where you need to be.
That's good. So you already touched that Columbia was in New York. And so for some young athletes, it's important as far as location. Some people want to stay home, some people want to travel. Did you being a young student athlete that was born into a military situation, did that make it easy for you to leave from North Carolina and go up to New York?
Absolutely, because I've been all over, in the country, out of the country, seeing all types of different people. And I really got used to being able to adapt. One thing that being a military kid allowed me to do is being able to adapt in different environments and situations. So it didn't matter if Columbia was in Hawaii, or it didn't matter. Like, if that's where I felt comfortable, that's where I was going. And it wasn't moving anywhere. It wasn't nothing that I was afraid of or worried about. So it was good.
Okay, that's cool. So now I'm originally from New Jersey, and you're now up in New York. How are you adjusting? And I, from some of the other places you've been as far as military, maybe it's been no problem. But how have you been handling the cold weather?
Man, it's tough, bro. It's tough. I'm not gonna lie, it's tough. Like, I'm just getting over a little bit of a sickness because of making some bad decisions in the cold weather. Not wearing a coat, like thinking it's warmer than what it is, thinking you can take it. I think that's what a lot of people go outside and like, it's not that cold. Nah, it's that cold. So make sure you got what you got. You got what you need to have on, because it can get very, very cold.
Yes.
I wasn't used to it. We actually just had a blizzard like last week or something like that. One fun. Yeah. Stayed in the room. So yeah. But make sure you adapt into the cold weather and you stay warm, because it'll get low.
Wow. So I'm glad you're enjoying it, because now I'm on the other end. Of course, I live in the area where
do you miss it? Do you miss it?
I don't. What I don't miss is I don't miss the cleaning up of the snow. Like, I don't think the cold weather would bother me. However, I've been now in North Carolina long enough that I've kind of adjusted to the weather here. Like, we can have the 40-degree days, and just last week we have some 70-degree days. You know, we get, when we finally get the snow 2 or 3 years apart, we get some snow. You know, by noon it's gone anyway, because it melted away. So but I happen to have that connection still. I have family that's right in New Jersey still, and so they're sending me pictures of all the snow that you all got up there last week. That I don't miss. I don't miss that. But it's definitely cool to hear you adjusting. I'll let you have that cold. I'll enjoy the weather that we have down here. So you're at an Ivy League school. For the person who's just heard the term Ivy League school, and you know, it's typically connected to someone that is doing well on the education side, what does it take to get into an Ivy League school? For that person that doesn't know, the young athlete that's doing pretty good in school, what does it take to get into an Ivy League school from the education standpoint?
I'll tell you right now, doing pretty good ain't enough.
All right.
You got to make sure you're on top of it. But I will say, like, the hardest part about an Ivy League school is getting in. That's the hardest part. Once you get here, everything that everybody makes it hype up to be, it's not as hard as people make it think. Make it out to be. It's not as hard. Like the hardest part is getting in. They definitely set the bar high with their applicants and stuff like that. Fortunately, basketball helped me a lot getting into the school. But yeah, like if you have aspirations to go to college and anything like that, the schoolwork is just as the same as it would be at NC State or Clemson or any other school. So as far as that, Ivy League, yes, very prestigious. A lot of money behind it as well. A lot of different alumni and resources that's all over the country. Like, yeah, absolutely. But as far as somebody like being intimidated by it and not thinking that they won't be able to excel like they would at a different school, nah, I wouldn't even say that. Like I always tell people, it's the same as every other school. It just so happens that our professor writes the textbook. So it's all good. But getting in is very, very, very competitive.
So if you could just give a slight, and I know every school is different, and like you said, it helps when you have other things going on, probably helps a little bit. But for the young kid that might be in middle school and say, hey, I've been getting these grades, can you give them a little bit like what needs to be the target as far as GPA, any entry test, what needs to be the target for that young gentleman or that young lady? Where do they need to kind of start from that middle school level as far as their goal to get their grades to a certain point to try to get into an Ivy League school?
Right. I would say you want to get the best grades as possible. A's, definitely want to have a lot of A's. But good thing about middle school, like middle school doesn't really count. Like they don't look at middle school.
Right.
But your freshman year, and when you get to high school, you need to be on your P's and Q's. Make sure you're getting the highest grades you possibly can. Make sure you're trying to do. I know me when I was in high school, I had a 4.12 GPA, but on the test, if you're playing a sport and stuff like that, the higher GPA, the more lenient they are with your test score. When I was talking and I was getting recruited, they were telling me 1,200 was that's what you wanted to aim to get. I got a little bit short from that, but my GPA was so high, and then I was doing a lot of other stuff outside of just being a student, which is something that they take into account as well, because somebody having a 4.5 GPA, but all they do is school, they have a lot of time to study, and just do what they got to do. But when you take into account maybe somebody that has like a 3.9, they got a solid test score, but then they also are really active in their community. They play a sport, they play an instrument. Like there's so many other things you have to do, which makes that 3.9 look a lot better. And then on top of that, you have a solid test score. You'll get in just as much as the kid that has the 4.5. There's actually a lot of cases where they take that 3.9 kid over the 4.5 kid just because like you're more active in other things and you're not just a book kid. Like you be more applicable and more conducive to like everyday life rather than just being like a book smart type of kid. No disrespect to that kid that has a 4.5, but it just looks a lot better when you have other things on your application and resume and stuff like that. As far as test scores, like you want to get as high as you possibly can. 1,200 was what a lot of schools was telling me to get, but I know a lot of kids on our team that was getting like 13s, 14s. I got a couple kids that was getting like 15, 40s, stuff like that. But I was looking at something like lately, like standardized testing is becoming a little bit obsolete. Like I think they're going more to doing away with that. So I would just say keep your GPA high as you possibly can. 4.0 is really good. But if you can get maybe in that soft spot of maybe 3.7 and higher, on top of like doing like extracurricular stuff and always studying, and if you have to do the standardized testing, make sure you're doing that as best as you can. You're just on track.
That's good. Well, we definitely appreciate you giving that information because I'm sure, and then like you touched on, I know middle school, but I always think it's good we give that information early. It gives that young person that thing to really shoot towards. So even as we tell them, say 8th grade, freshman year, your 9th grade year, this is what you're going to need if you have your eyes on an Ivy League school. Then now I feel like we're equipping them with the information they need to have that target as far as what they need to do. So I thank you for all that information. At what point has grades always been pretty easy for you? Have you always maintained high grades throughout school?
Absolutely. My parents always ingrained that in us from young. Like, good grades, don't be coming home with no C's, barely want you coming home with no B's. But for me, I've always been super competitive in everything. So I never wanted to do anything and just be average in it and not do my best. And that transferred over to my academics in school as well. Like, I always wanted to make sure my stuff was up to par, always make sure I was doing what I had to do. And I never really had to study in high school. I was always that kid that kind of retained the information and took it in because I always paid attention in class. But as I got to college, that don't really work. So you got to be studying, you got to develop those habits, and you got to make sure you do what you're doing. So, but yeah, I've always took my academics serious, and that's really a testament and tribute to my parents.
Okay, and so you kind of touched on it, the difference in college and really needing to put the extra work in studying. But I'll ask you from the academic end, what was the big difference between high school and college?
Obviously the workload, you have a little bit more work. Well, I wouldn't even say that because you pretty much know what you're gonna do. Like, nothing really catches you by surprise. You get the syllabus. That's very thorough. Like, those syllabi are very, very thorough when you get those. Professors, very knowledgeable what they're doing, and they're there to teach the material in a way where you can take it and understand it. But like I said, developing those study habits, and you have so many resources at your hand that ain't no teachers really trying to hear no excuses about anything, because there's so much that like you have at your disposal. Whether you need tutoring or you need help writing a paper, you go to the writing center. You need any extra help or anything like that, you can go to your advisor. I actually did a program during the summer that Columbia offered for like low income and first generation and minority students that kind of just helped them to be equipped for college and stuff like that when I was coming in as a freshman. So I had them, they were a huge help and stuff like that. But college, there's no joke with those academics. Those teachers get paid a lot. And if you're gonna go in there and just mess around, they could care less. They won't say a word to you, but they'll give you that F when that semester ends. So just make sure you're doing what you gotta do and managing your time as well. You don't really, in high school, you kind of have a teacher that's letting you know, like, hey, you're kind of, if you're dropping, like, you need to get on your stuff, like all that. When you get to college, it's all you. If you don't want to go to class, you don't got to. But just know, like, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your parents' time, you're just wasting a lot of time. And you gotta take it upon yourself to really want to stay on top of your stuff. You don't got your parents seeing your report card before you do. You don't got nobody saying nothing to you. So you got to make sure you're doing it on your own. If you develop those habits, you'll be fine. But it's very important that you develop those habits.
So I'll say this: you just kind of touched on it, and I'm sure people have one mindset when it comes to Ivy League school. But since you've been there, do you experience people that come to the Ivy League school and then they lose focus and fail classes and struggle in classes? Do you experience a lot of that?
You definitely see a lot of, like I said, it happens at every school. Like, Ivy League isn't immune to it. Man, it's just a part of just developing maturity and growing up. Like, especially being in a situation like you're in the middle of New York City, like, it's easy to get distracted. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff you can do. So you see it all the time, but you also see kids, like, once they see those grades dropping and once they see stuff like that happen, that's like, oh, let me refocus. Let me get back to what I'm doing, and then they hop back on and they get back on track. But yeah, it happens. It happens all the time. You see it from a lot of people, for sure.
Cool. So I asked you, you're playing on the D1 level. You're doing well in class. you know, when it comes to your grades, what is it that keeps you grounded and focused? Even going through the AAU circuit and all that, what was it that kept you really grounded? Because so many athletes have opportunities to play on a high level, and I think they lose focus, they go to their head, they stop putting the work in. What is it that keeps you grounded?
At the end of the day, like, I want to play at the highest level. I want to play in the NBA. And there were so many moments in my life, and even to this day, that continue to remind me that you're not where you need to be yet. Just keep, you guys still got a lot of work to do. You still got to keep pushing. You still got to make sure you're doing what you're doing. So I'm always staying on top of my stuff. I'm always staying on my P's and Q's and making sure I'm doing what I got to do in order to make sure I'm becoming a better basketball player, stuff like that. Just being in college alone, like, it'll give you a reality check, even if you don't need one. Like, it'll show you everybody here is just as good as everybody. And I think I was pretty equipped coming in, knowing all that and being ready to compete and start from the groundwork. But like, you're reminded every day that, like, the work has to be put in. You can't go a day thinking, oh, I've arrived, I'm good, anything like that, because it can be taken from you really quickly. So, and just like with the whole COVID thing, like, there's games that's postponed and stuff like that. Like, you just never know when it'll be your last time to go out there and compete. So you want to make sure you're always giving your 110%, giving your best effort, and always doing what you got to do. So that's what keeps me motivated, keeps me focused. And I just want to make it to the highest level possible. So, yeah.
That's good. That's good. So I know earlier when you touched on it, I didn't even ask the question, what you do in your spare time. I know you touched on it a little bit, but we had a quick conversation right before we even started recording. And so you told me a little bit about something that you have going on. Tell us a little bit about it, those that's watching, so they'll know how they can kind of see you in another arena outside of basketball. Yeah. What is it that you do?
No, absolutely. So I have my own podcast as well. Pretty much talking about sports, and pretty much like how we're doing right now, I kind of do the same thing. It's called True Talks. For those who know, like, my Instagram name is 3 Truly, so it's a little spin-off of that. And you can go watch that on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcast, stuff like that. So it's just me being on the opposite end of the conversation and just talking to other people, getting to know why they do what they do, and where they come from, and just getting to know people in a different light outside of their profession. So I enjoy it. I do it every week, and I just started back up last month, because I had a lot of stuff going on as far as basketball and things like that. But I enjoy it, and it's something that I've been doing for a minute, and I'm gonna continue to do it. So.
Good. That's good. If you're talking to the young athlete, and you know, what do you give the young person that tells you, I'm in middle school, I want to play at the highest level? If you're sitting down and you got 2 seconds to give them some information, what is it that you give them, the tool that you give them to really focus on, from the academic end to what it takes working off the court? We didn't really ask you, but you could touch on it here. Just like, what does it take to really make it to at least the college level? What are some things you've done? What would you tell that young athlete if they asked you, hey, what does it take to play on the level you're on?
I think my first question would be to them, like what do you do? And what do you do to make sure you can get to the next level? Like, if you want to play on the JV team, like, what are you doing to make sure you're trying to get on the JV team? What are you doing to make sure you get on varsity, stuff like that? Because a lot of kids, and I was definitely one of those kids, a lot of them, I want to go to the NBA. I want to do this. I want to do that. But you overlook, I want to make varsity. You overlook, I want to go to college. Like, you just have that dream of going to NBA. And there's steps. Like my coach always says, everything is segmented. There's always an obstacle you have to go up to. There's always something you got to do. So that's the first question to ask. But as far as like just giving them advice and everything, I just always tell them, like, just make sure you're working, make sure you're doing your game. Like, I don't want to be having this conversation with this kid, and then next thing you know, I see you out here making bad decisions. Because whenever I'm back home and everything, everybody sees me around. I'm very accessible. You can hit me up, stuff like that. So I'll talk to a lot of kids, and they're like, You say, I'm just trying to get better. I'm just trying to do it. Da, da, da. But when I go to certain gyms and I come out there and I'm working out, I don't see you no more after we had that conversation. So like, what are you doing? What are you doing at home when you're not working out? When you're not at practice? When are you watching basketball? Are you doing your schoolwork? Because if you don't got your grades, you're not going to be on the court. And then how you expect to get any scholarships if you're not on the court playing basketball? It just doesn't work like that. So it's so many other things first outside of the game on top of like making sure you're getting your shots up a day, make sure you're eating the right things, make sure you're getting your endurance up, and make sure you're getting your strength up. So it's like I said, it's a lot of different things outside of basketball that you got to make sure you're on top of early before you can even think about getting to that next level. And it's very important that you take that in as a young kid. Because I know when I was young and when I was asking those questions to the guys that were older than me, I wasn't really doing what I had to do. And it took for me to go through some troubles and some tough times for me to really wake up and be like, okay, cool. So I want to start that process early and alleviate any type of like heartbreak or disappointment from any other kid because they're not putting that work in. Make sure you putting that work in, make sure you're doing what you got to do. And if you are, and with a lot of people, it's a lot of luck as well too. Like you could be doing all that work and still not make it. So make sure you have a humble mindset. You're grateful for every moment. You're doing what you got to do because at the end of the day, this is a blessing. It's not something it's not a right. It's not a. I think my mom and dad used to say it's a privilege, not a right. So you got to make sure like you're thankful for it. You're taking advantage of your opportunity because any gift that's not used will be taken away from you. So just make sure you're taking advantage of everything and you're doing what you got to do. And if you're doing that, then I don't see why you can't do anything you don't set your mind to.
That's good. That's good. So I'll ask this. I know we touched on grades earlier, but I never really got into what's actually your major at Columbia.
So I major in urban studies, pretty much like city planning and stuff like that, and trying to just develop urban communities, which is full of minority and low income and people that look like us. Just trying to develop those communities and stuff like that, and learn more about how we can get our people and urban communities to the next level.
That's good. That's good. So you've already touched on it. You want to play on the highest level possible. You would like to play on the NBA level, professional level. But what are some things outside of sport? Because that's one of the main goals of Out and Up. We want to really just challenge our young people, even if you play on the highest level, like how are you focusing on life outside of the game? Like, so what are some things that you would like to do? I think we heard a little bit in what you're majoring in, but tell us what are some things you would like to do outside of the sport,
right?
Career-wise,
right. So I'm really big on fashion. I definitely want to be in the fashion industry and do some stuff like that. As a matter of fact, I've done some intern work last summer, and I'll be doing some this summer with some fashion companies and stuff like that, just to kind of get more familiar with the business and how stuff works, and trying to find my footing in that. And then, like I just said, urban studies. Like I'm really big on trying to improve our communities in cities like New York and even back home in like Fayetteville and areas like that where they're underappreciated, underfinanced, underproduced, and don't have the resources that people would think that they would have in such a big area where it's so populated. So just making sure just trying to do my part and making sure the world's a better place. And whether that's through real estate and developing, like I've always, like I think my dream in the urban studies field is to develop like more luxurious ways of housing, more departments of housing and stuff like that, and forms of housing where low income people can live. And we already have we have affordable housing and housing areas, stuff like that, but those can be kind of under maintained at times. And I want to make sure that I can take that to the next level. And the same way people have condos out in the suburbs and are living in high scale areas, I kind of want to bring that to inner cities and stuff like that. So just furthering the career in that, and then fashion, like those are some things I want to do outside of basketball when that ball starts bouncing for me.
That's good. That's good. So again, I'm so blessed to have our guest on because he is again an example of what we're really trying to encourage the young athlete to really focus on life beyond. And I think the last conversation we were having a few minutes prior to kind of ties into what you just said. Understanding that it's a privilege to do what you're doing. And
Right.
what I always like to kind of point out to our young athletes is that on each level you play on, your platform is, I believe, being enlarged for you to impact more lives.
Right.
And so when you recognize it's not just about you, it's an opportunity that you have to do something on a larger stage, then I think it always helps that young athlete to really maintain that focus and that drive. I think it's sometimes when our athletes become selfish, you start thinking it's all about you playing that sport, that you lose focus and you kind of lose that drive. But when you understand you have the opportunities to do what you're talking about doing and helping other people, I think those are the things that help for doors to continue to open, as well as I'm sure that helps to keep you, to drive you to continue
Absolutely.
staying focused on what you're doing. So I think that's awesome. And so we're going to get close. We're close to wrapping up, but I just want to ask questions I always ask to the young athlete. How important is it to have positive people in your circle?
Extremely important. Extremely important. I always, I can't thank my parents enough for just ingraining like the right principles and the right ideas in my head, and just making sure that I'm always hearing what I need to hear, and not just telling me what I want to hear, what they might think is not going to hurt my feelings and stuff like that. Like, my parents always kept it 100% real with me, and I've always surrounded myself with people that keep it 100% real with me. And just making sure you have those people that's always going to encourage you, but then also going to tell you when you're messing up, and when you're not being a positive influence, when you're not being a good role model to the kids that are younger than you, when you're not putting in the work, when you think you can take a day off and stuff like that. So just making sure you always have like those people that's in your corner, and have that good support system that's always going to make sure you're doing what you got to do, is extremely important, because there's a lot of kids that were way more talented than me, way smarter than me, but because they didn't have that support system around them, they fell short. So I always wanted to make sure that I was doing what I had to do, just to make my family proud, and just make everybody that talks any type of good about me proud, because like, how the community is back home. Like, it's a real tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody. And you never want nobody to be saying anything bad about you, or say anything like, oh yeah, he was good in high school, but then he got over there and he lost focus, or he got over there and he started just putting his priorities elsewhere. Like, you never want somebody to talk to you in as an afterthought or in hindsight. So I always want to make sure I'm making my family proud, I'm making my community proud, and at the end of the day, making God proud as well, because without him, I wouldn't have none of this. And if you believe in God or whoever, like, just make sure you're doing what you got to do to make your people proud and everything, because it means a lot when you're away from home and somebody goes up to your family and they're like, oh yeah, I saw what Zay was doing. Like, he's doing real well. Like, you want people to say that to your family. You want people to do all that. And you just want to know yourself that you're doing what you got to do to take not only yourself to the next level, but your family name. So I enjoy that, and I really take that into account. Having positive people is a tremendous thing, and been very beneficial to your growth.
That's good. That's good. So as we end, I always end with this question: who is it that inspires you in life?
Ooh. There's a few people, actually. Definitely my parents, my younger brother as well, and then all of my relatives that are pretty much older than me. Yeah, all of my relatives that are older than me, whether it's like my sister, my siblings, or my great grandparents, anything like that, like all of them, because like I really think I have the best family in the world. I really think that they've always been behind me with anything I ever done, and I've always tried to make them proud. And my parents, because like they've been there since day one. They see me when I had no scholarships and I was running around the house scared and angry and sad and stuff like that. And they see me when I had bad games. They see me when I had good games. They were there to encourage me, get on me, whatever. And then I say my younger brother because I always try to make sure I'm setting the right example for him. He's a senior in high school right now, getting ready to make the biggest decision of his life in terms of what he's going to do with his future. So I always wanted to make sure that I was setting the right example for him and doing what I had to do in order to be a good role model for him. So I say my parents, my younger brother, and all my relatives, for sure.
That's good. That's good. Well, Mr. McLean, we appreciate you joining us on Out and Up for this episode. Just the information that you've given, I know will be a big help and a big tool to the young student athletes. I know we even have older viewers that watch, and I know give information back to some of their players or their family members. So we thank you for the information that you've given us, and we appreciate you being on the show with us.
Nah, I appreciate you for having me, man. Thanks for reaching out. It was a no-brainer once you reached out, man. I definitely like doing stuff like this, and giving the little bit of game I can give to those other young people. So absolutely.
Well, we appreciate you. As you all know, we always say it's good to be awesome in the sport you're playing, but it's even better to be great in life. So we just challenge you to do everything possible to achieve your best outside of the game, and let's go out and up. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next episode.